Welcome to the Open Book live stream. This is episode 1 Know and Be Known. Tonight we'll be covering effective and meaningful communication and what a lack of good communication can do to your relationship, and our favorite tool for helping build a safe and emotionally connected environment for your marriage. My name is Bryan Hoss, and this is my wife Christine, and we are just hossing around. So we're going to dive right in. What is an effective and meaningful conversation between a married couple? The ultimate goal should be to promote a healthy relationship, right? So we go into a relationship wanting to know our spouse, and marriage is going to be the exact opposite.
Actually, I think you switched those.
Oh, ADD moment or dyslexia. Yeah, there you go.
That we go into a relationship, especially a marriage, wanting to be known. We want that other person to know us better than anybody. Okay, nothing like skipping around when I'm not ready.
But you know what? That's what this is all about, right? So I know that it has been said there's different views on this. You know, we're talking about the wife being submissive to the husband being submissive to the wife. But the big picture here is that the husband is here to serve his wife, and the wife is here to serve the husband as Christ. Like Christ came not to be served, but to serve us. And if I'm effectively trying to the Bible verses are, I'd say, chapter 5, 22 through 33. So losing my train of thought on that. Thanks, babe. Appreciate that.
Okay, so I'm going to read the verse. This is Ephesians 5:22. Wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands also ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself. For no one has ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is great, but I am speaking with reference to Christ and the church. Nevertheless, each individual among you also is to love his own wife, even as himself, and the wife must see to it that she respects her husband.
Thank you for reading that. And I missed the cue on that, guys. I really did. See? Effective and meaningful communication. So let's think about that for a second, right? If I'm truly loving my wife if I'm loving myself, I'm going to give her the time of day in my conversation. I'm not just going to come home when she asks me, honey, how was your day? And go, yeah, it sucked or it was good, and then keep walking. And that happens in most relationships. I mean, I've had 2 failed marriages myself. This is my 3rd. This was about to be a failed marriage too. But we got saved by the grace of God. Grace of God, this marriage is going to see till death do us part. So when you have a lack of good communication, you get into surface conversations, emotional distancing, and then a huge amount of unspoken expectations. So, like, what is a surface conversation? I mean, that looks like
Okay, go ahead. This is the joy of going live, is that We have a wonderful outline that we spent a lot of time putting together, and we have now skipped to the end and gone back to the beginning and gone all over the place. So, going back to our first point, what an ideal relationship is. So, apparently, I am the tech master and the task master on this, or the outline master.
Right.
We want to talk about being known and being known.
What does that look like?
An ideal relationship, or actually going back, a normal human instinct is we want to go into a relationship to be known. But an ideal relationship is to know. Ideally, I want to go into the relationship, using ours as an example, I want to go in to know you. Not so that you will know me. That's a wonderful bonus, and hopefully that's where we end up. But
Right.
if my goal is to know you, your goal is to know me, then we have an ideal relationship.
Well, and it's just not. It's not a lot. It's and bear with me, right? Because having the ADD, I want to go into 100 million bunny trails. But so to know, right? So guys, so I'm a very selfish person myself. So to know Christine, I need to be intentional about my conversation. What my motive is. Is my motive for self pleasing, or is it to really know Christine, her hopes, her dreams, her fears? Just like I'll bring this up. We were talking about this that Saturday. We had a huge or Sunday. We had a huge blow up because you had fears of exactly what just happened. Right? I mean, we talked about that we had a, you're going that direction, slamming a door. I'm going to play Diablo 3. You know, so we can calm down and come back, and then I come back and we both we realize and have our, have an effective communication, really talking about your fears. It's not something that I needed to fix, but just that you understood, or that you felt that I understood what your fears were.
Mm-hmm.
So that could have been in our old pattern and lack of good the lack of communication. That could have been ugly. That fight could have lasted for days.
Yes.
Like literally for days. And then, so and when you have the lack of communication, which leads to emotional distance. So lack of communication is I come home from work, you ask, hey honey, how was your day? I'm like, oh, it sucked, and I keep walking to the bedroom. And then I come back, I have dinner, and we still haven't talked about anything that's tangible on my part, or even on your part, right? That I haven't given you the time of day about how my day has been. Or it's, do you take the kid to soccer practice or whatever it is, but you're never getting to the root of your day.
Well, and then you also have surface conversations, which is even more involved than what you just talked about, of something that they talk about at the Focus on the Families intensive, for example, Gary Smalley's curriculum, is work conversation.
Yeah.
Did you take out the garbage? What's for dinner? Did you feed the cat?
Did you pay the bills?
Yeah, just your basic, boring, get through life work details.
Oh, you mean just going through the motions?
Exactly.
And not really giving any effort, or actually even giving any part of my soul to you. Like I'm not letting you in. Surface communication means I don't have to afford you any emotional, I'd say currency, really is what it is, right? So if I need to open up and let you in, so if I want to be known, and to be known, I have to let you in.
It's interesting that you bring up the currency. So there is a very famous marriage therapist. His name is John Gottman, and how he phrases it is emotional bids.
Yeah.
So it follows in that currency, whereas someone reaches out and throws an emotional bid, like you're gambling. I'm going to throw the bid out on the table, and you can choose to ignore it, reject it, accept it, do whatever those may be. And if you're dealing with surface conversations, you don't even notice those emotional bids.
No, you don't. And then that causes emotional distancing, right?
Exactly.
So when we have surface conversation, I'm not letting you in, so it builds resentment. And then I have unspoken expectations. And those can be, so you have the emotional distancing means I don't let you in. It's probably wreaking havoc on your sex life, and that's a topic for another day. And we go into that. That could be an hour conversation about the lack of good communication, what that does to your sex life.
That's not an hour-long conversation. That's an hour-long introduction to the conversation.
Yeah, right. So getting back to the emotional distancing builds up resentment. And I'm definitely not going to let you in, and I'm going to do like what I did to you 4 years ago, make you the brunt of all my problems. I'm just a paycheck. You don't love me. You don't do, it's all about you. You are the brunt of my problems, and I just married the wrong person. So from there, and again, that leads into unspoken expectations when people get married, right? And we had that on ours, especially from my end. I'm not going to speak for you because I'm not you, but I had these expectations of you, cooking, cleaning, basically a slave is what I had in my mind. To be 100% honest, right? To cook, clean, sexually service me, do what I say to do, and don't talk back. Don't and not in so many words, but manipulated that situation to make you feel like a second-class citizen in your own home.
And then on the flip side, you have, I don't know how common it is anymore, but for me, being raised in a fairly conservative church, my expectation was that you would be the spiritual leader, that you would lead Bible study every day, that you would pray with me every morning, that, somehow magically being married to you would make me jump up and be eager to get up on Sunday morning and go to church.
And how's that worked out?
Don't comment there.
Yeah, no, how's that worked out?
And anyway.
It's a struggle. The fight is real.
Yes.
Well,
it's the morning, just to clarify, it's the morning, not the church.
This is true. But I like how you say that, is that women can put their husbands on such a pedestal, like with that unspoken expectation of he's everything, and then when he falls, there's no getting back, right? Because he's like, for me, when I fell, because that was going to happen. When I fell, it also brought the realization to you where you had placed me above God. Is like, this is where he is.
And since you brought that up, I want to say that it's frighteningly common. I can't tell you how many women I've talked to that have had this same issue, especially, well, I haven't talked to a lot of women with the issue that haven't dealt with infidelity or addiction in their marriage, but a lot of the women who I have who have in that situation, they did just that. They put their husband, you have this level of where God is in your life, and there's your husband.
Yeah.
And it's a little, first of all, it's out of balance. God should be first in your life. But beyond that, your husband is human. He can't take that spot. He's just not capable of that kind of pressure.
Yeah. And the other thing too is going to the point of, you said about my husband is going to be the spiritual leader of this, that he needs to do all these things, but that is not, like, for me, that's just not my personality. I'm not a researcher like that. Like, everything that deals with this whole live stream happening is your dream, is our dream, but you made it happen. If you would have asked me to make this happen, we would be sitting in the dark, not broadcasting. So
Or holding up the
Yeah,
phone.
yeah. It would be horrifying. I don't even want to think about that. So I am again grateful for that. So moving forward, what's a good way for the listeners to have effective and meaningful communication? What's a good tool?
Well, Bryan, since you asked,
And I had to do it because you said so. Everybody's. My wife said no softballs. Don't ask me a question, and I just can't help myself. So I'm gonna take
it's
that
the
back.
microphone. You
Yeah,
feel like you're in a radio show.
yeah. You
saying
feel like
it.
you're in a radio show just dropping softballs. So really, what I was getting at is called a heart talk. Gary Smalley is the one who came up with this. This is not a tool that we that we designed or thought of or whatever. This is we got this tool when we went to the Focus on the Family Hope Restored marriage intensive when our marriage was on the rocks, on the verge of divorce 4 years ago, and that's a subject for another day. We'll get into that, but the heart talk is really one of the things that really helped us get connected emotionally. And now, 4 years post that, we can tell. I know that for me, I've never been in a relationship where I could tell that I was being disconnected from you. Like, I mean, and we talked about this the other day, that I kept asking you if you were okay, which is bad on my part because I should have used more words. I should have been a little more caring about that. But so in the heart talk, there is called this method called ICU, which is identify the emotional message. The C stands for care, and the U stands for understanding. Right. So this method allows you to get in touch as the speaker with my emotions, and if there's something that's bothering me, or it doesn't always have to be negative, but the first thing I want to do is be able to be honest with myself about what's nagging me. Sometimes it's not even about your spouse. It could be something at work, whatever that's nagging, and causing me to be distant, emotionally distant from my wife. From there, I'm going to ask for time. I'm going to ask Christine if she has a moment to be able to have a heart talk.
And sorry, I'm noticing some technical issues. So from there, you have a very important step that you have to be aware of with your spouse. I'm going to ask for time, but it's not right now.
Correct.
It's not, you're working on a project. We have a slightly different circumstance than a lot of people do because we work from home. And
so everybody knows that, and don't switch to just the thing, is that we're around each other 24/7, 365 most of the time.
Yeah.
And so
just walking in and saying, "Hey, Bryan, I'm feeling emotionally disconnected. I need a heart talk. Let's go." It doesn't work that way.
Right. And the response also can't just come back and go, "Okay, I'm ready to talk about that." There's some responsibility on the listener's end of it, if you're the one that's initiating it, that I need to go back and say, "Okay, Christine has asked for a heart talk. I need to process that and then say, okay, Chris, when's a good time for you? I understand that you need to heart talk. You're feeling disconnected. How about tonight at 8 o'clock or whatever that is, or tomorrow morning at 7.
No.
So with that, and we want to make sure also, I want to stipulate this, is that when you're doing the heart talk, this is not about fixing problems. This needs to be an extremely, extremely safe environment, right? Because I'm going to be in touch with my emotions. I'm going to be very vulnerable to my spouse about what I'm feeling. Like Christine was this weekend on Sunday about her fears about doing this show, and she was very emotional and very vulnerable, and I kind of took it a little lightly and used. And granted, we were in the middle of making breakfast, but still, I should have taken the time to really understand what she was doing, and then after we had the blow up and we came back, I really sat down and put myself in her shoes and said, "Wow, I get it. If this fails, if the technology doesn't work, whatever, you're good. You look like a failure."
Right. And you just kind of briefly outlined, so let's describe this. It is the Heart Talk is an ICU.
Right.
So there's 3 points to that's an acronym. The identify, and these are the responsibilities of the listener.
That is correct.
Identify the emotional message. That means if you are the listener, you are identifying the problem that the speaker is bringing.
Well, the emotion, yes. I
Or
want to
the
know
issue.
what the underlying emotion is
Yeah.
going on there. Yeah.
And then the C stands for care. This is a very important.
Yes. Not to be dismissive.
Right. You need to care.
You need to put aside that ADD moment and give your wife one, or the spouse, whichever, because there are wives out there that have ADD. So you need to be, as a listener, 100% attentive.
And then the U is understanding. So you're identifying the message, you are caring about your spouse, and you are understanding and achieving understanding. And that goes into the listener speaker roles of the speaker keeps going until they feel
Correct.
that the
Yes.
listener has understood.
It's not the listener saying, "Oh, I get it," because that's what happened on Sunday. I thought I had it, and I was completely wrong. Completely wrong, right? So then the roles are going to reverse, right? So once you feel like I've understood, then you're going to say, "Okay, what emotions are you going through right now?" And this is not about changing. We want to stipulate that this isn't about fixing somebody, because you can't. Your spouse will keep on pushing the issue if they don't feel like you're understanding. And that's, again, I want to make that crystal clear.
And
This
it's
is
not just in a heart talk.
No. Yeah, that's in general. If your spouse is touching on a subject day in and day out, I guarantee you the problem is that you're not understanding what that person's talking about. And we know that firsthand. The first 8 years of this marriage, I didn't have a clue that she was in emotional wreck because of me and my addiction. So with that in mind, we practice this. Like they recommend that you practice this every day for 2 weeks for about 10 minutes, and that this is not going to be easy, right? Because human nature is to fix things. Like, I want to fix what's wrong with Chris. Like this weekend, I want to fix it. So I need to go in there with the mindset of, okay, she's not attacking me. I'm not attacking her. But I really want to know what's bothering her, right? I mean, I really want to know my spouse. I want to say, "Babe, I care, love, I care about you. I know that this thing is freaking you out. I know you don't want me to fix anything. You just want me to listen, and you want me to understand. You want me to understand that you're freaking out about this whole situation." Or maybe she's not. Maybe she's like, maybe it's about having kids. It could be anything that's causing a disconnect in your marriage.
And then there are responsibilities as the speaker when you're doing a heart talk, is before you even initiate, before you want to start this heart talk, you need to get in touch with your emotions. You need to, for example, I think the biggest one for us is that one or both of us will notice that our communication has just become surface.
Yes.
And we'll say, "Hey, love, I need a heart talk. We're getting really emotional, distant. I don't feel connected to you."
And it happens for the rigors of the day. I mean, working from home and being around each other 24/7, you get that. I mean, it happens. We're human. And I don't want to paint this picture that we have this super duper amazing marriage that like it's all rainbows and unicorns, because that's not just true. That's not reality. I mean, we have fights. We have miscommunication, mostly on my part. No, and Christine does too. She has, I mean, we're both human. So I want to just paint that picture that that this is not going to be easy, but I will tell you, it is the most rewarding thing that we have done in our marriage in the road of recovery. Is being able to be open, vulnerable, not her judging me. I'm not judging her, but for her to really know me and to be known, and it's just an amazing deal. And the last thing that we want to talk about is speaking life into your spouse.
Okay. Or we could stick with the outline and actually finish the points.
I thought we did because I said talk about practices.
Uh,
2 weeks,
Yeah.
10 minutes every day.
You skip to the end, but we need to get back
Oh.
to the middle. See, the problem is that I'm running all this technology over here trying to make sure that the stream is going, and as soon as I look at something else, Bryan is
It's
off
the
and
rails. No, but that's the ADD.
running.
Tell me that's not frustrating.
Yes. So,
So we're talking about the heart
so,
talk,
right.
seeking understand.
So you get in touch with your own emotions as the speaker. You ask for a specific time,
Right.
and you go in with the goal of seeking understanding, asking your spouse to understand what you are coming from, not asking your spouse to do anything specific, not asking them to fix
Or change.
do anything, just understanding.
Yeah.
And as Bryan pointed out, we have the there. Bryan, will you read that verse?
Let me get to that.
How about it's right on the screen?
Oh, but I tell you that every careless word. So let me back up a second. Matthew 12, verse 36. But I tell you that every careless word that people speak, they shall give an accounting for that day, accounting for it in the day of judgment. And so think about that. The words that we use towards our spouse, if we treat them nasty, you're going to hold accountable for that, right? And we heard this and I don't remember where it was, someone had made the comment. And I believe it was when I was doing the Concord series. Dr. Ted Robertson, right? Concord. Pure Desire. Thank you. God, it took forever to get that out. But he talked about, is your wife a better person since she's married you, or has she gotten worse? What did you help your wife grow, or did you cause her to die? Which is amazing. If you think about that, if I'm speaking life, if I'm taking that verse to heart, that I'm going to be held accountable for every word that comes out of my mouth, especially, not that it says it, but it says every idle word, or every careless word, which means I've said words in anger, in passing, whatever, that you're going to hold accountable. That makes you rethink how you talk to your wife or husband.
Right. So then we go into listener roles, because as a listener, you have, the ICU responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
but to help you clarify that, you are focusing on your spouse's feelings. This is not something that needs to be fixed. And something that I want to really emphasize is validation. And I think it's something that people miss a lot of times. Our emotions are always real. Whatever triggered those emotions may or may not have actually happened,
True.
but I'm still feeling it.
Right.
You could say X, Y, and Z, and I heard A, B, and C, and my emotional reaction from that and the fallout from that is still valid and real, even though you didn't say what I thought you said, you didn't intend what I heard.
Yeah. Perfect example, when you had your LASIK. That was, remember you said it's never about you. And all I was trying to figure out was I was trying to flesh through the finances on that. And you had that thing of like, I said this, but you heard this. And you were like, okay, you don't want me to have the LASIK. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. And that's a perfect example of how I'm trying to figure out how we can do it. And you heard, he doesn't want me to have it. He doesn't care about me.
Right.
So with that in mind, the other thing too, as the listener, I want to allow the speaker's emotion to impact me. I want to put myself in their shoes. And I'm going to bring this up like Chris the other day. Like I said, she was feeling distant, not the fight that we had, but for the last couple of weeks that Chris has felt kind of distant, disconnected. And the fact is that she had some own, there wasn't something that I had done or something that had happened, but she was not feeling comfortable in her own skin. And I don't know what that feels like. But the moment she started talking about that, I felt terrified. What that must feel like not to be comfortable in my own skin. Not to look in the mirror and go, I don't like myself. And it takes me back for a moment is in my addiction when I was off the rails. Totally, that was kind of where my mind goes right now, is that I didn't like that person. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I just didn't like that person who I was. So yours even taking it a step further is that like you were not even comfortable being you, right. Which is horrifying. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And so putting myself in that position, going, wow, how do I can't fix this, but I can truly care about how you're feeling.
Yeah, and then finally. And this is where things start to switch, is you, as the listener, demonstrate your understanding of what the speaker is going through. So you demonstrate that. I'll use you specifically.
Yes.
So Bryan specifically demonstrates that he has understood what I wanted to talk about, and I'm done. As far as the heart talk goes, I've gone through what I needed to talk about and said my piece. I'm good.
Now it's my turn.
Now it's your turn.
Yeah.
And then we switch roles and I become the listener. But let me rephrase. Bryan doesn't get to become the speaker if I've initiated until I feel like he has demonstrated understanding.
That is correct. The speaker does not relinquish until he feels that the listener has understood what the emotion they're trying to convey. And sometimes, like the thick head, like this right here, you may have to help them out. Just saying.
But that's the thing, though, is that if you are, like what you just said about
being comfortable.
Being comfortable in my own skin. It's just a really odd circumstance because you were picking at me. Something's bothering you. Something is bothering you. Talk to me about it. And I just threw out something that sounded like it made sense. And you picked up on that in a way that I didn't expect. So I realized afterwards that that's exactly what was going on, that I didn't feel comfortable. And your extreme understanding and your caring really clarified for me what I was struggling with. It helped me to understand what was like.
And let's clarify this. It wasn't something that happened. I mean, it wasn't like I was ignoring you.
No.
It wasn't. It was just. It's the rigors of every day. Because life, you hear me say this enough, Chris, because you're around me. Life is just hard. I mean, it is. Life is hard.
Well, and you've talked about, or we've already talked about, how we are around each other so much, which is great. I mean, we're both essentially introverts, but with the enforced isolation that's happening right now, we're not getting, or at least I'm not, because you're working, you're dealing with clients, you're doing
getting
all the
interaction
things
with other people. Yeah.
But what I do for our outside business isn't interactive. I interact with you.
Yeah. Well, and you miss out that going to the Thursday bowling with the ladies and some other things.
And we're not going to church. We're not doing our normal. I don't need a whole lot of social interaction, and most social interaction overwhelms me.
Yeah, and instead, it's that finite amount of currency, emotional currency that we have.
Yeah.
And you only have so much you can give.
But then with this isolation, I don't have any of that.
Yeah, right.
And I'm feeling uncomfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
Because I don't have, all I have is feedback from you, and you're focused on things that you need to be focused on.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's nothing against either one of us.
But that leads to, then that's perfect, because we talked about practicing this, but it leads into speaking life into your spouse. So once I understand the heart talk, I can use, it's kind of a hybrid method, but it's about speaking life into you. The fact is that you're noticing that and giving encouragement. Like you do this quite often for me, especially when I'm working on Archie. Man, I really appreciate you taking on this monumental task out there, trying to restore this 1980s Silver Eagle, turning it into our home so we can go venturing, because that's both one of our dreams, is to go RVing, and you express that, of how grateful you are for that. And then the same thing, like there's little things that we talk about. I'm grateful that you do the laundry.
And I'm wondering, I don't think we did this before we went to the intensive.
What's that?
I don't think there was a whole lot of encouragement on either one of our parts. Not just you to me, but me to you.
Oh no, I would say it wasn't like it is now. No, not even close. I would say it was few and far between. Especially if we had a big fight or something like that, you would normally write like a letter saying I love you and I appreciate that. I mean, I have several letters that are in there that you've written, but on my end, definitely not on my end, that I didn't give you, and there was no encouragement that first 8 years, and definitely not being grateful for anything that you did, just only looking at the negative. I mean, and not saying that I think we talked about that it was like 60-40, 60% good, 40% of it was bad.
Okay.
So.
But then you do the heart talk, and initially the recommendation is to do this every day for at least 2 weeks.
10 minutes.
And at least 10 minutes. Give yourself time. And it's not going to be fun, and it's not going to always be productive or helpful.
And if you think it's going to be easy, you better lower your expectations.
Yes.
Because it's not. I mean, even like when we came back from the intensive, it was still tough.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've done so much work in the road of recovery, myself and you, and it was still tough to be able to get in contact with emotions when something is bothering me, and it most of the time had nothing to do with you and had everything to do with me. That's just kind of the way it is. I mean, just like I said, life is hard.
Well, we
hope you've...
No. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the tech again. You do the heart talk, and then what happens, you do that for 2 weeks. That's a psychological sort of training, kind of goes into positive psychology, moving things forward. And then what happens is that you start doing little miniature heart talks when something.
Yes. That's a good term.
And we do that a lot.
Yes.
Like you were talking about the issues that we had on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have that little miniature heart talk, and we still do occasionally, we'll sit down and say a major heart talk. And something that we didn't even cover in our outline is when you do heart talk, there is a posture for it.
Oh yeah.
We can't demonstrate in here, but
it's knee to knee.
Knee to knee, holding hands, eye to eye. And however you have to manage that, you are fully physically focused on your partner.
Yes.
And that kind of intense physical attention is necessary. And we'll have our mini heart talks often, but every once in a while, I mean, it's probably been about 3 or 4 months since we've had a real heart talk where we said we need to sit down and do.
About once a quarter that we have one, somewhere around there. I mean, 3 to 4 months. Yeah, once a quarter. So that's our take on effective and meaningful communication, and a tool that we just, like I said, we love this tool. It has really helped us to be able to know, like, there are no secrets between Christine and I, because there was some stuff that was bothering me from childhood and then high school and then service, just in general, just things that bothered me. So there are no secrets anymore. I feel like I know my wife, and I feel like she knows me, And when you're in that state, you know when you feel disconnected from your spouse. I mean, it's a very real disconnected that we feel like that.
And going back to our theme today, if you go into your relationship with the goal of knowing your spouse, and your spouse goes into the relationship with the goal of knowing you, something beautiful happens in that you now have someone whose focus is to know you and you feel known. So you can be known and know.
That's right. That's I think that's the the heartfelt cry of every soul is I want to know and I want to be known. I want to be authentically known, not fake. I don't want not my Facebook profile, not my avatar. I want you to know Bryan Danley Hoss, and I want to know Christine Patrice Hoss. So, thank you guys so much for checking us out. And in 2 weeks, we'll have the next topic. We'll probably have another sneak preview or post it on the website. If you have something and you're watching this live stream and you want us to talk about a subject, just post it on there and we'll research it. Put our take our life experiences that we had. I'm a recovering addict. My wife obviously is married to an addict, and we're just enjoying life at this point. And thank you so much. God bless you guys, and take care.